A young family I knew bought their first house, a real house with a porch and a yard and a kitchen big enough to dance in. They moved in around late summer, full of plans. And then the nights got cooler, and that's when it started. The wife went down for a glass of water one evening, flicked on the kitchen light, and the floor moved. Roaches, scattering for the dark like the light itself had burned them. She didn't sleep right for a week, so they did what everybody does. They called the company. A man in a clean shirt came out, sprayed along the baseboards, talked in a calm voice, and slid a contract across the counter. A 1-year agreement, quarterly visits, sign here. And for a little while, it worked. The roaches went quiet. The ants disappeared. They felt like they'd solved it. Then spring came, and the things came back. Not all at once, just one ant on the counter, then a trail of them by the window. A roach behind the stove. So the company came again and sprayed again, and the calendar turned again, and the bill came due again. $800 a year, sometimes closer to $1,200. Year after year after year, a slow leak out of their bank account that never quite fixed the thing it was supposed to fix. Ants in the spring, roaches in the fall, fleas when the dog came in from the yard. Round and round, forever, like a wheel that only turns one direction, toward the next invoice. Now, here is the part I want you to sit with for a second, because it's going to sound too simple to be true. There is a soft white powder. It costs about $4. And it kills more than 100 different kinds of crawling pests, every one of them, by the exact same method. It isn't a poison. There's no chemical in it that hunts down a nervous system. It's a mineral, something dug right out of the earth. And it is so gentle that farmers mix it straight into stored grain that people and animals go on to eat. $4. A bag of it can outlast the bugs, outlast the seasons, outlast that whole $1,200 a year wheel. I know how that lands. If it were that easy, everybody'd know. Stay with me. There's a reason they don't, and we'll get there. First, let me tell you who I am, so you know I'm not selling you a miracle. My name's Silas Holler. I'm an old hill man, raised back in the hollows of the Appalachians, where the fog sits in the low places of a morning and the houses lean a little with age. My people didn't have money for exterminators, and they wouldn't have trusted one if he'd driven up the holler in a shined-up truck. They had what they knew. Knowledge passed hand to hand, mouth to ear, grandmother to grandchild, the way you pass down how to read weather in the sky or set a bone. And in my grandfather's house, there was a shelf. It sat just above the door that led down to the cellar, that cool, damp, dark place where the canning was kept and the potatoes wintered over. On that shelf was an old tin can, dented at one corner, the label long since worn off to nothing. Inside it was that white powder. Granddad would reach up now and again, take a pinch or a scoop, and lay it down in a line along a sill or a threshold, quiet as a man saying grace. I want you to hear this plain. In all the years I spent under that roof, in a damp old house tucked into a wet green hillside where every bug in creation should have been at home, I never once saw a roach, not one ant marching across the kitchen. The food in the cellar kept clean. We weren't lucky. We were protected by something that cost almost nothing and asked for almost nothing in return. That's what this is about. Over the next while, I'm going to tell you exactly what that powder is, how it does what it does, the honest limits of it, because it does have limits, and I won't lie to you about them, and precisely how to use it in your own home. I've also written all of it down, every measurement and every spot to treat, in a simple guide over on the site, if you'd rather have it in your hand than in your head. But you don't need the guide to follow along. Just listen. So what is it? The fancy name is diatomaceous earth. Don't let that scare you. In plain talk, it's a soft, chalky, clay-like dust, fine as flour, pale as bone. It comes from the fossilized remains of tiny water creatures that settled into the beds of ancient lakes and seas, packed down over ages into a soft stone, then ground back into powder. Run it between your fingers and it feels like talc, like the baby powder you dust on a child. Smooth, harmless. You could spill it on your hand and brush it off and think nothing of it at all. But here's the secret, and it's the whole secret. To you and me, with our soft skin, it's nothing. Put it under a magnifying glass, though, shrink yourself down to the size of an ant, and that gentle dust turns into something else entirely. Every grain is a jagged little shard, sharp as broken glass, edged and pointed every which way. A bug doesn't have skin like ours. It wears its skeleton on the outside, sealed with a thin, waxy coat that holds its moisture in. When that bug crawls across the powder, those countless tiny edges score and scratch right through that waxy seal. And then, simply, the bug dries out, loses its water to the air, the way a puddle does in the sun. No poison, no nerve agent, just thirst it cannot quench. Here's why that matters more than anything else I'll tell you. Bugs can learn to beat a chemical. Spray the same poison long enough, and the survivors breed survivors, until one day the spray does nothing. That's the whole reason that families' roaches kept coming back. But you cannot evolve your way out of broken glass. There's no resistance to physics. A blade is a blade in every generation. The powder doesn't negotiate, and it never goes out of date. That's the foundation. Next time, I'll show you everything it kills, and the honest catch nobody mentions. So you understand the how of it now, the broken glass, the slow drying out, the simple fact that a bug can't outsmart a blade. Let me show you the what this $4 powder actually reaches, where it stands, and the honest places where it falls short. Because I told you I wouldn't lie to you, and a man who only tells you the good half is selling something. Start with the list. And it is a long list. Ants, every kind I've ever met. The little sugar ants that trail across a counter, the big black ones that march out of a crack in the wall, the fire ants that build mounds in the yard and bite like a struck match. Roaches, of course, the thing that started us down this road. Fleas, the kind that ride in on a dog and set up house in the carpet. Silverfish, those silvery little darters you find in a damp bathroom. Earwigs with their pincers. Centipedes and millipedes. Crickets. Ticks. Even the slugs that slime across a garden at night. And weevils, those tiny beetles that get into stored flour and grain and ruin a whole sack. But I want to put a heavy mark beside one of them. Bedbugs. I'll say more on the how later, but hear this now. Bedbugs are the pest that has beaten the chemicals. They've grown so tough against the sprays that whole companies will tell you, quietly, that the poison just doesn't bite anymore. And here is where this soft white powder does its proudest work. It wins exactly where the modern chemistry has thrown up its hands. Because again, there is no resistance to broken glass. Now, this isn't some folk remedy I'm dressing up in respectable clothes. Let me give you the weight behind it. This powder has been registered with the government's environmental agency, the EPA, as a recognized pesticide since the early 1960s. More than 60 years on the books. Organic farmers, the ones who won't touch a synthetic chemical, lean on it heavily. And I keep coming back to this because it's the thing that ought to set your mind at ease. They mix the food-grade kind directly into stored grain, into the wheat and corn that becomes your bread and your cornmeal. It rides along to protect the harvest from weevils, and it does no harm to the people or the livestock who eat that grain afterward. You cannot say that about a can of bug spray. Now the honest part, the catch. This powder is patient. It is not a thunderclap. A chemical spray drops a bug in seconds and gives you that satisfying little jolt of victory. This does not do that, and if you go in expecting it, you'll quit too soon and call it a failure. On the soft, small pests, your fleas, your tiny ants, you'll often see results inside a day or two. On the big armored ones, the heavy roaches with their thick shells, it can take 3 days, sometimes a full week, before the powder works its way through and dries them out. Slow, but sure, like water wearing down a stone. It never hurries and it never stops. Here's the second limit, and it's the one that trips up the most people. It does not kill eggs. The shells are sealed too tight for the powder to reach what's inside. So when you lay it down, you've dealt with the living, but not the unhatched, which means you cannot treat once and walk away. You have to leave that powder in place through several cycles of hatching, a couple of weeks, sometimes more, so that as each new generation comes up out of its egg, it crawls into the same waiting blade. Lay it and leave it. Patience is the whole game. And now the third limit, and this one is the most important thing I'll say all day, so let it land. Wet powder does nothing. Nothing at all. The entire trick depends on dry, drifting, microscopic edges. The moment that powder takes on water, from a heavy dew, from rain, from the damp of a steamy bathroom or a sweating basement, those edges stick together, clump up, and go soft. The blade goes to sleep. A bug walks straight across wet powder and feels nothing. So everywhere you use this, the rule is the same. Keep it dry or it isn't working. Remember that and you'll succeed. Forget it and you'll swear the powder's no good when the truth is you drowned it. Now, the most important purchase decision you will make, and the one almost nobody warns you about. There are 2 kinds of this powder sold on the very same shelf. They can look identical. They can cost about the same. And the difference between them is enormous, enough that getting it wrong can hurt you. The first is called food grade. This is the one you want, always. It's the pure, clean kind, the kind the organic farmers mix into grain, the kind safe to keep above your own cellar door the way my grandfather did. This is the one that belongs in a home with children and animals and food. The second is called pool grade. It's sold for filtering swimming pool water, and on the bag it can look like a twin of the first. But it has been put through tremendous heat in a furnace, which changes its very nature at the smallest level, and makes the dust genuinely dangerous to breathe over time. It often carries added chemicals, besides. It is not for your kitchen, not for your pet, not for your grain. Pool grade is for pools. Read the bag. If it does not say the words food grade, set it back down and walk on. As for getting your hands on the right kind, it's everywhere once you know the name. A common, trustworthy brand you'll see is Harris, sold plainly in a bag, easy to find at the hardware store, the farm supply store, or ordered to your door. And the price is the quiet miracle of the whole thing. A 4-pound bag, plenty to treat a whole house and then some, runs you only about $4 to $8. And if you've got land, animals, a barn, a garden to defend, you can buy it by the 50-pound sack for somewhere around $20 to $30. Set that beside the $800 to $1,200 a year that family was paying, and the math stops being math. It becomes a kind of quiet anger. So you know what it kills. You know its honest limits. Slow, no good on eggs, useless wet. And you know to reach for the food-grade kind and nothing else. Next time, I'll put it in your hands. Exactly where to lay it, room by room, pest by pest. And then I'll tell you the real reason nobody ever told you any of this. So now, I put it in your hands. Let's lay this powder down right, room by room, pest by pest. And then, before we're done, I'll tell you the thing underneath all of it. The real reason this knowledge ended up on a forgotten shelf instead of in every home in the country. Rule number 1. Write it on the inside of your eyelids. A thin layer, never a pile. This is where good folks ruin the whole thing. They figure if a little works, a heap works better, so they scoop out a mound of powder and dump it along the wall. And the bugs, who are not stupid, simply walk around it. A pile is a wall they go over and a hill they go around. What you want is a film so thin it's almost not there. A faint dusting, like the first frost on a window pane, like a breath of flour on a board. The bug doesn't see it, doesn't avoid it, and walks straight through. To get that, don't sprinkle it by hand. Use a little duster, a puffer bottle, a powder applicator, the kind that breathes out a fine cloud. A few dollars, and it does the work of 100 careful fingers. Now, where to lay it inside the house? Think like the bug. They travel the edges, the dark, the hidden seams. So you treat the baseboards all along where the floor meets the wall. You treat underneath the refrigerator, the stove, the dishwasher, the warm, dark, food-smelling places they love. The hinges and corners of cupboards. Under the sink, around the pipes where they come through the wall. Along the door frames and window frames, every threshold a thing might cross. And if you can get into the wall cavities, behind an outlet plate, into a gap, lay it there, because inside a dry wall it sits undisturbed and goes on working for years. That's the gift of it. In the dry, dark places, it doesn't expire. It just waits. Now by the job, because different pests want different handling. For fleas, dust the carpet, work it gently into the fibers, and treat the dog's bedding where they breed. One word here. If your animal itself is infested, take it to the veterinarian. The powder is for the house and the bedding, not a treatment to pour over a suffering animal. Treat the environment. Let the vet treat the dog. For bedbugs, this is the one I marked heavy before. Lay it under the mattress, work it into the seams and joints of the bed frame, run it along the baseboards of the room. Here is where this quiet powder plants its flag and wins on the very ground where the expensive chemicals surrendered. Slow, patient, and final. For outside, lay a line around the foundation of the house, the border the bugs must cross to get in. Dust the edges of the garden beds, the floor of the chicken coop. But mind the wet rule. Do this in the morning after the dew has burned off, and only when no rain is coming. Wet powder is sleeping powder. For grain and flour, if you store it, about 1 cup of food-grade powder mixed through 50 pounds of grain. That's the trick the farmers have used for generations, and it's why my grandfather's cellar stayed clean. Now, honest safety, because gentle is not the same as nothing. Wear a dust mask when you apply it. It is not a poison, but it is a fine dust, and any fine dust irritates the lungs if you breathe a cloud of it. Keep the bag up and away from small children, the way you'd keep flour or anything fine from little hands. With cats and dogs, the thin layer matters double. Too much dries their skin and paws, so a whisper, not a blanket. And outdoors, never dust it onto open flowers. The bees land there, and the bees are our friends and our food. Spare the blossoms, and you spare them. And now, the thing I promised. Why didn't anyone tell you? I'll give you the 2 facts plain, side by side, and let them sit there. A $4 powder can quietly protect a home for years. And families pay $800 to $1,200 a year, forever, fighting the same bugs that keep coming back. Both of those are true, both at the same time. Now, I'm not going to point at a villain and tell you there's a man in a dark room hiding this from you. That's not how it works, and I won't insult you with it. The truth is simpler, and in its way, sadder. There is no money in a thing that's solved. There is enormous money in a thing that needs you again next quarter. A one-time fix is a single sale. A subscription is a river. So the whole industry, without any one person plotting it, naturally drifts toward the answer that keeps you on the calendar. It's not a conspiracy. It's just the way the money flows downhill, toward "you'll need us again." And in that drift, an old, cheap, permanent answer gets quietly left off the shelf. Not buried, just never mentioned. Until it's forgotten by everyone, except an old hillman whose grandfather kept a dented tin above the cellar door. My granddad knew. His mother knew before him. The powder sat on that shelf the whole time, asking nothing, while the rest of the world signed contracts. So here's what I'd have you do this week. Go and buy 1 bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth and a little duster. Treat your house, the baseboards, the dark corners, the thresholds, the way I told you. Then leave it be for 1 or 2 weeks. Patience, not panic. Let it do its slow, certain work through every hatching, the way water wears the stone. And do me one kindness. Down in the comments, tell me which pest has tormented you the worst, the ants, the roaches, the fleas, the bedbugs, and then come back in a couple of weeks and tell me what happened. I want to hear it. One more thing before I go. The next time we talk, I'll share the old hill way of dealing with mice and rats, another thing my people knew that the world forgot. But for tonight, this is all you need. Take the tin, draw a thin white line along your threshold, and then forget about it. It'll do its work, quiet as my grandfather, quiet as the fog in the hollow, and it won't ask you for a single thing again.